In June 1812, the United States declared war on the British Empire. At the time, Britain possessed the most lethal, globe-spanning navy on Earth, while the U.S. regular army had fewer than 12,000 soldiers. The American military was vastly unprepared. To make up the numbers, the government relied on poorly paid state militias, many of whom lacked discipline and refused orders to cross state lines or fight on foreign soil. This chart of the June 1812 congressional vote shows the political fracture behind the decision. The Democratic Republicans voted entirely in favor of war, while every single Federalist voted against it, passing the declaration by the smallest margin in American history. The public reaction was immediate and violent. In Baltimore, anti-war publishers were attacked by mobs, triggering over a month of deadly rioting in the city streets. The country entered the war internally fractured, pushed into a corner by three separate crises boiling over in three distinct geographic arenas. The first arena was the Atlantic Ocean, which had become collateral damage in a massive European conflict. Britain was locked in a struggle with Napoleonic France, and cutting off the French economy was essential to their survival. To achieve this, the British government issued the Orders in Council of 1807. This legal mechanism authorized the Royal Navy to blockade Europe and strictly regulate any neutral American ships trying to do business on the continent. But Britain also needed men to fight. The Royal Navy suffered from a massive manpower shortage, so they aggressively relied on a practice known as impressment, forcing men into naval service. British officers routinely boarded sovereign American ships, kidnapping sailors they claimed were British subjects. This culminated in the Chesapeake Affair. Notice the American flag resting on the deck here, a glaring symbol of a young nation completely unable to defend its own vessels. For the United States, American sovereignty was being publicly humiliated on the Atlantic daily. This 1812 map highlights the western frontier. As American settlers pushed west, they hit fierce indigenous resistance. British Canada smuggled weapons to these tribes, like Tecumseh's Confederacy, aiming to carve out a permanent Native American buffer state to protect Canada and permanently choke off American expansion. The western frontier was a strategic proxy war, with the British Empire actively arming forces to cap America's future growth. The pressures from the ocean and the frontier eventually collided in a third sphere, Washington, D.C. A faction of aggressive politicians known as the Warhawks took control in Congress. They argued that if the United States continued to tolerate kidnapped sailors and armed proxy wars, their claimed independence was a sham. This political pressure led directly to the June 1812 declaration of war. In London, during that exact same month, the British government caved. Under pressure from the Napoleonic Wars, they made concessions on neutral trade specifically to avoid conflict with the United States. The news of those British peace concessions had to travel across the Atlantic Ocean by sail, a journey that took weeks. By the time the peace offering finally reached American shores in late July, the troops were already mobilizing. Wounded national pride, combined with the lag time of ocean-faring mail, had locked the two nations into war. Over the next 3 years, the United States suffered heavy devastation. The ultimate humiliation came in 1814 when British forces marched into Washington and burned the American capital to the ground. Yet, the Americans also secured fierce victories toward the end of the conflict, most notably when forces led by Andrew Jackson repelled a British assault at the Battle of New Orleans. This bloodbath resulted in the Treaty of Ghent, which ended the war as a tie on paper. Not a single border changed hands, and the treaty did not address the initial grievance of naval impressment. Despite the technical draw, the young republic emerged as a strategic winner. Having shown they could endure a full-scale assault from a superpower, the United States forced Europe to take them seriously. Britain never again challenged American sovereignty or kidnapped its sailors. The true losers of the conflict sat far away from the ocean. At the peace table, Britain abandoned its demand for a Native American buffer state, cutting off their military support. This left the indigenous nations to face American expansion alone. The United States failed to conquer new lands from the British Empire, but the conflict cleared the internal path for American dominance over the continent.